Welcome to the WildlingSports podcast, guys. I'm Ryan. As always, I'm here with Jordan.
Yep.
We got a great episode for you here today. As always, we got our Week 5 review, prediction reviews from last week. We got some Week 6 previews, some games we're looking at, some fantasy notes we're looking at, higher lowers, rapid fire picks again, some high-level notes going into Week 6, and what we've seen so far. You can check out old podcasts, as always, www.wildlingsports.com, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or email us at wildlingsports@gmail.com. Again, we've been putting podcasts up here once a week on wildlingsports.com. We've been having some articles and some of the notes from our podcasts up as well. So definitely keep apprised of what's up there and keep following us, guys. Anything to add before we get started here, Jordan?
Nope.
Nice. I think we got a good episode here today, so let's jump right into last week. Let's talk about the Thursday, Monday games. We don't got to go in depth with these from last week, but, the Cardinals and Panthers were in very, very similar spots, both sitting at 1-3. Both their quarterbacks were out for the game. Both were playing, subpar teams. Cardinals were on the road on short rest. Panthers were at home. An extra long rest pan on Monday. Panthers were probably playing a little bit better of a team in the Bucks than the 49ers. Both were entering the games 1-3 as well. So both really needed wins with their backup quarterbacks to save the season there. I think Carolina had a better backup in Derek Anderson, but I think the Cardinals as a whole played a bit better. Cardinals ended up winning, pushing back to 2-3. Panthers 1-4. A lot of turnovers in that game. Anderson had 2 INTs. He had a fumble. Couple kind of subpar plays there from both teams in the Bucks and the Panthers. Feel like it's going to be hard. Panthers jumping out to 1-4. It's going to be hard for them to fight back now. They gotta win at least 3 of the next 4 here. Maybe get back to 4-5. 5-4, they go 4-0, to really put themselves in a position to at least contend coming down the stretch.
Yeah. Their best bet is to try and make a wild card spot. Like you said, they need to get some wins. They need to get some wins quick. And it's not going to be an easy task for them. I didn't see a lot of this game. I was pretty much already. I can't remember why I didn't see that game. I just wasn't paying attention to it. It wasn't one that I was huge on. Battle backups. It seemed like it did come down to the wire towards the end. But I wasn't interested in it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you had Aguayo from the Bucks who ended up missing two field goals. He started off the season 3 for 7 this year from field goal range. Bucks took him in the second round of the draft. He actually played with Winston in college. Both went to Florida State. Both are within their first few years in the league here. Most accurate kicker in NCAA history. And started off 3 for 7. Had the game winner, though, that they put through the uprights. Probably saved his job there. And another, bad penalties and bad turnovers from Carolina all game. Olsen, almost 200 yards receiving. He was open down the middle all game. But they really, they couldn't get a solid running game going. Artis Payne had about 80 yards. Anderson had about 275. They moved the ball okay, just too many turnovers.
Yeah. I think Carolina does get a little bit of a reprieve this week. They do get Cam Newton back, and they do get, or supposedly Cam Newton's coming back, and they do get Stewart back. So
Yeah.
Hopefully things will start turning around for them. They are a good team. They have lots of potential, but maybe they just they came in this season too big-headed, I guess.
They may have. I mean, when they started off 1-2, you could kind of see it because their 2 losses were to the Vikings and the Broncos, two of the top 5 teams in the league right now, maybe, the 2 best teams in the league. And then they get Atlanta, and Atlanta shuts them down. And really runs up the score on that Panthers defense. And then last week, obviously, the Bucs, you don't have Cam Newton for that game. Got a few players injured. You make a bunch of penalties. But like you said, they need to start winning. Their offense should get back on track this week against New Orleans, though. And the Cardinals, they really kind of controlled that game for a good amount of the time there. Niners made some mistakes there at the end of the first half to let Arizona back in it. And then, Stanton did not look good. They really, if they want to make a run, Palmer has to be back and Palmer has to be on his game. I mean, Stanton only completed 11 passes all game. Six of them were to Larry Fitzgerald. A couple of them were to Duke Johnson out of the backfield. He only had 3 or 4 completions to receivers that weren't Larry Fitzgerald. Only 120 yards rushing. Their defense really won that game for him there. And obviously Fitzgerald, Fitzgerald came up big with 2 touchdowns, making critical catches. Arizona wins with their backup in a division game on the road, and and keeps himself in the race here, keeps them within striking distance.
Yeah, they needed that win as well. I kind of hold them to a higher standard than I do Carolina, just because their defense is so good, and they've been so good for a lot of years. I don't understand what their issue is. I don't know if it's injuries that they've been getting, or if they're just not showing up ready for games, which that goes back to coaching. And I'd hate to put any blame on Bruce Arians because he's one of my favorite coaches, but something's not right there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, since the end of the last few games of the regular season last year, when Palmer had that thumb injury, obviously through the playoffs he looked bad, and then starting out this year, Palmer just has not looked good. Stanton didn't look good last game. That defense won it for him last week. So it's not quite time to hit the panic button in Arizona yet, I don't think. This kept them in it, this win. Carolina, it's about that time where you either need to hit that panic button or your hands hovering over top of it, because they are quickly, falling out of it. Think about it, 1-4, if they want to realistically contend for a wild card spot, the worst that they can be is 9-7. That 9-7 probably might not even get it done. But finishing 9-7, they got to go 8-3 down the stretch here. Get to 10-6, which will be a bit better. They got to go 9-2 down the stretch. So they got tough division games. They got to play Atlanta again. So Carolina's right on that borderline there to needing to really run out of time. Let's jump into the New York-Pittsburgh game.
Yeah, so that was a game that we liked a lot, or going into next week. Ben Roethlisberger obviously had a great game. I was kind of hoping for Antonio Brown to have a big game. He had a good game, but he didn't have the same game that Sammy Coates had. Those two were obviously some of the top performers in fantasy last week. Sammy Coates had around 100. What did he have? 170 yard run.
Yeah, he had about 100, 140, 150 yards with
2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns. And the funny part about that game, I mean, Coates put up those numbers, 30-plus fantasy points for Coates last week. And realistically, it should have been a lot more. He dropped an easy touchdown that just hit him in the hands, no one around him. Made 2 or 3 other big drops down the field. So, Coates' game there was really hot cold last week. Made some great plays, but also made some really kind of boneheaded plays.
Right. I was kind of surprised Ben kept going back to him as much as he did, because I actually watched that game and I was like, I saw the first drop, I saw the second drop, and I was like, Antonio Brown's definitely going to start getting the ball now. Ben's losing his confidence, but he kept going right back to Sammy Coates.
Yeah, he did. Without Eli Rogers, obviously Martavis Bryant's gone for the year. I think that Coates, once Rogers gets healthy, they have a deep threat opposite Antonio Brown there and opposite Le'Veon Bell. That position is I think anybody with some speed is going to excel in that spot there. The defense is so shifted towards Brown, shifts so much towards Bell that they're going to get a lot of single coverage down the field. Darius Hayward-Bay, hasn't had a resurrection in Pittsburgh over the last few years, but he's found a role in Pittsburgh over the last few years.
Yeah, he's solid in protection. He's a solid special teamer.
Yeah, and he gets, he gets 2 or 3 long touchdown passes a year because that's all they ask him to do. Go deep on a few routes. Antonio Brown hasn't put up, amazing fantasy numbers so far this year, but he has been solid every game. Last game wasn't great, but he still had 20, 23, 24 fantasy points. 80 yards, 9 receptions, a touchdown. So he's kind of right in that 18 to 22 point range every week.
Yeah, and last week he had an opportunity. There was a play late in the game after he scored the first touchdown where Ben threw it to him, and they just kind of tackled him. I think it was in like the 5 to 10 yard range. And if he scores that touchdown, he's right up there and has the same numbers as Sammy Coates did.
Yeah, that's true. And let me just say this, Le'Veon Bell from a fantasy perspective, if he wasn't planning to miss the first 3 games of the season, if Bell keeps on this pace, he's going to be the number 1 fantasy draft pick, no doubt. This year he would have been, next year he will be. He's still in his rookie contract, so he's still relatively young, 24, 25 range. Last week against the Jets, I thought was a perfect example. Pittsburgh couldn't get any semblance of a running game going at all. Bell rushed 20 times for 66 yards only. So that's, just over 3 yards a carry. Not a very good rushing effort from Bell. And he still ends up with 24 fantasy points because he catches 9 balls for 90 yards. Bell, they split him out wide on so many plays. He just lines up in the slot as a receiver on so many plays. And then obviously screens and check downs out of the backfield he's great with. So I think Bell going forward, I can see him being maybe the top fantasy scorer from here on out through the rest of the year. As long as Roethlisberger stays in and he stays healthy.
Yep, I can kind of get on that train. There's some other guys who are just scoring at a crazy pace.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
It's going to be competitive, but I definitely agree. Bell will definitely be top 3.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt. And he, and like I said, that 24 fantasy points in a game where he only rushed for 60 yards. So, so that's a pretty good game for him there. Pittsburgh's offense is looking strong here. It's gonna be tough to stop them down the backfield. They just have down the stretch here. They have so many weapons, and if they can stay healthy, which they couldn't last year, I think they're in a really, really strong position. Let's jump to New England and Cleveland.
Yeah, so Tom Brady, everybody knows that was his first week back. Him and Martellus Bennett were definitely the stars from last week for the Patriots. The Patriots got out to a very, very big lead, but they committed to the pass for some reason.
Yeah.
I was kind of banking on them getting out to a large lead and then feeding LeGarrette Blount the ball for a while. I'm a little nervous. I've been hearing a few things about LeGarrette Blount. His hip injury is a little worse than what's being reported on. So if you have him in season-long formats, you may want to start looking at James White or looking to just bring in somebody for a little extra help. And definitely with Tom Brady back, Blunt's going to lose some touches because it seems like they're just going to throw the hell out of the ball for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree, and especially in your PPR leagues, you keep an eye on James White. With Brady coming back now, White's stock is going to go way up in fantasy leagues, especially if Blunt's a bit injured. I mean, that rushing attack last week is a bit scary. Rushed 18 times for 37 yards, so he only averaged 2 yards a rush last week.
It seems like he's just going to go back to getting his goal line carries. how they started working him in when he first got to New England.
Exactly. And that was against a Browns team which doesn't have a stellar defense. Their rush defense is a lot better than their secondary, but still not enough to justify an 18 for 37 line there.
No.
I'd keep an eye on White now that Brady's back. Definitely keep a sharp eye on Blunt if you're playing him in fantasy leagues. And couple weeks down the road, they did say Dion Lewis, week 8, week 9, somewhere around there, he might be back. So I'd keep an eye on him as well. He was great last year. I think, if he gets healthy enough to get in around week 8 and 9, I think he'll be definitely be a waiver wire person to pick up after, 1 or 2 weeks in the league there. But Brady looked great last week. The Browns, not more quarterback injuries here, so they've now in 5 games played 5 different quarterbacks. They started with Griffin, then they had McCown, then Kessler, then Pryor, now Whitehurst, and then back to Pryor again because Whitehurst and Kessler both got injured. They cut Charlie Whitehurst this week.
The clipboard Jesus.
Yeah, the cut football Jesus. All signs point to Kessler will probably be back this week. And McCown's not too far away either. But, New England just looked strong. This was more about Brady's return. And really Gronk's return, too, had over 100 yards receiving. Bennett got the touchdowns, but Gronk, plus 100 yards. He had a good game. So, if you got to like that if you're a fantasy owner of him.
Yeah, you just got to be careful when it gets late in the season again because it seems like, he goes through these phases. He's hurt for a while. He heals up. He comes back. He's great for a few games, and then he comes back and he gets injured again. That's just one reason why I would never, ever take Gronkowski in the first round.
Yep. So let's, we got a couple more games to go over, but just quickly, let's jump into Atlanta Broncos real quick. Falcons versus Broncos. Another game. Called it last week. Falcons over Broncos.
You did. You
4
did.
for 4 on the upsets now. But just looking at this, Atlanta came in with a very specific plan, and they executed that plan. They were going to target the Broncos' linebacking cores with their excellent running backs, Freeman and Coleman, and they really did that. They were committed to the run. Freeman only totaled 88 yards, but they rushed it 23 times, kept him honest. Coleman had over 130 yards receiving out of the backfield. Freeman had yards receiving out of the backfield. All day they were checking down to those running backs and making them cover them. Paxton Lynch didn't look great in the game. Their defense played very well. So all in all, just a very good game plan from Atlanta there. So why don't you take us through the afternoon game, Chargers at Raiders?
Yeah, this was definitely my favorite game of last week.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely didn't disappoint. I think it did hit the over from that was set by Vegas. As always, Derek Carr and Amari Cooper have both had terrific games. I thought Rivers had a really good game. They just always end up coming up short for whatever reason. He put up some decent fantasy numbers. I really like him going forward in season-long formats. It seems like they're just going to throw the ball a ton. We all know the rushing attack isn't very strong. And they're struggling.
Yeah, Rivers had a good, really good fantasy game. I mean, but we called that last week. Anybody playing Oakland, you can look out for. Rivers had 4 TDs, 360 yards passing. Did have 2 picks though. Michael Crabtree again looks great down the stretch there. Catches another ball, another go-ahead touchdown late in the fourth quarter. And San Diego just continues to find ways to lose these games. Melvin Gordon put another one on the ground, botched the snap to tie it up at the end of regulation for the field goal. So, the Chargers are, we said it the past few weeks, they're last year's Giants. They just, they very easily could be 5-0 right now. Yeah. Now they're sitting at 1-4, blew these games late, and, they're really reevaluating this team. Phillip Rivers is getting up there in his 30s. I think it's definitely time in that division. San Diego's almost out of it now at 1-4.
Yeah. I'm there was a Tyrell Williams sighting last week, which was kind of exciting if you had him on your team. In some of the deeper formats, he definitely put up a good game. I think he had 117 yards and a touchdown. In daily fantasy, I'm still staying away from any Chargers wide receivers. It's just impossible to tell who's going to get the ball. One week it's Travis Benjamin. The next week it's Inman. Then last week it was Tyrell Williams. You can't predict who's going to get the ball for these guys.
Yeah, Benjamin, to be fair, though, Benjamin did have a good week last week as well. But that's because they were playing the Raiders, and most of their receivers were going to have a good week. Benjamin had about, 7 catches, about $120 there. So it's a solid week for Benjamin. I still like Gordon in fantasy-wide leagues. He's playing on more passing downs than McCluster is, and obviously he's getting the majority of the first and second down reps. And Oakland's a team I really like from a fantasy perspective going forward. And Oakland might be one of the most exciting teams in the league here.
I agree.
Moving forward. I know we were real hype on them in our off-season podcast, saying they were one of the most exciting teams, and they have really lived up to it. Carr's playing great. Crabtree's playing great. If you look at the stats over the past year and a half since Cooper came in the league, Crabtree's really been their number one guy in Oakland. He's got more receptions. He's been targeted more. He's got more touchdowns, more yards. So, Crabtree's really that number one guy in Oakland. But Cooper as a number 2 is still strong.
He's a solid receiver. He always has been. I kind of agree when he made that stink in San Francisco. I can't remember which quarterback he was complaining about, but I definitely think that's what the issue was. He just didn't have a quarterback with the skills to get him the ball, and now he does, and you see what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think Oakland's in a good spot here, sitting at 4-1. Broncos are 4-1. Chiefs are right there as well. So I think that that division is going to be interesting down the stretch. And we potentially could see 2 wild cards, the Raiders and Chiefs, or the Broncos if one of the Raiders or Chiefs win the division. We could see 2 wild card teams out of that division there, which hasn't happened in a while. So let's jump to the Sunday night game. We are both pretty wrong, I'd say, on this game. We both like the Giants receivers here in this game, and they didn't put up great numbers here.
They put up a stinker.
Yeah, only 16 points. Beckham had a late touchdown, but not a great game for any of those receivers.
Man, that Green Bay defense turned out to be a little bit better than everybody thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, for sure it did. And, that secondary in Green Bay's getting healthier. They had the bye week last week to kind of rein it back in. We both thought kind of starting out the year here that Green Bay was going to really try to commit to the running game, and that's just not something I've seen starting out the season. Eddie Lacy only had 11 carries last week. Rodgers threw the ball 45 times, only completed 23. So Rodgers didn't have it was basically 50% completion rate, which is not strong. 2 TDs, 2 interceptions. Lacy was playing good too. 11 rushes, averaging about 70 or 7 yards a rush. So he had over 80 yards.
That's real good.
Yeah, so Lacy was playing strong. They just haven't committed to the run here early in the season. Green Bay kind of got by with one here because of the strength of their defense. But I'd like to see that offense kind of come back into form here. Randall Cobb sighting from a fantasy standpoint, 20 fantasy points last week, 9 receptions, 110 yards, 108 yards.
I may have messed up on all my other projections, but I got that one right.
You got one good week here. Let's not jump ahead of ourselves here. Last week as another good week of football in the books. Without jumping into the other games, some of the things to call out, Bills really kind of turned it on. Last week, we called out that there were really kind of 5 or 3 games with 2 teams kind of on that bubble picture in the playoff race. 2 teams kind of fighting right on the either outside or edge of the playoffs. It was kind of a show us what you got games there. And the Bills and the Rams were one. Bills ended up playing well, moving back to 3-2. Kind of bounced back from that 0-2 start. Los Angeles drops down to 3-2, but I think they're still happy with that 3-2 start there. Dallas Cowboys just came out and smoked the Bengals. Dak Prescott, another solid game. They're not asking him to do too much. 75% pass or completion percentage, 230 yards, 1 touchdown. Elliott still looking great, averaging almost 9 yards a rush last week, 15 for 134 and 2 touchdowns. So Dallas came out and really showed us there. And,
they're smoking people.
Yeah, and then Baltimore and Washington. Washington came back to win there, but that was another game that was kind of ugly on both sides there. Baltimore's offense couldn't get anything going. Again, weren't committing to the run. Terrence West had 95 yards and only 11 carries. So he was running the ball well. They wouldn't commit there. But, again, Washington started at 0-2, bounced back nicely here to 3-2. So let's jump into some of the predictions from last week. So last week, you went 5-9 on your picks last week. So not a great week. I went 9-5. Still not a great week for me either here. Did have the Atlanta upset last week, so obviously that was a good one. 20-9 I am over the last 2 weeks. 15 and 14 yards. So you're a couple games back, but we'll see how this week goes for you. Well, let's go through the higher and lowers. We said higher or lower, Wentz, 16 fantasy points. We both went higher, and he did go higher, 19.3.
Nice.
Matt Ryan, 20 fantasy points. We both went lower. He was lower, 17.6.
Nice.
OBJ, 1.5 touchdowns. I went lower, you went higher. It was lower, 1 touchdown for OBJ last week.
All right. I'll take it.
Yep, Brady, 3.5 touchdowns. I went lower, you went higher. It was lower, 3 TDs. Julio, 100 yards receiving. I went lower, you went higher. He was lower, only 29 yards last week.
Wow.
And Melvin Gordon, 19 fantasy points. We both went higher, actually, and it was lower, only 13. So season to date, 8-4 to 5-7. So I opened up some room here last week, but I'm definitely not confident about this week's games here. Not feeling good about it at all this week.
Yeah, these games this week are tricky. I think there's going to be a lot more close games this week than there have been in the past couple weeks.
Oh yeah, like I said, definitely not feeling good about it this week. But we'll see how it goes. Let's jump into some previews this week. Which game you want to go over first?
So I have New England, Cincinnati first. Again, I expect this to be another complete blowout. Cincinnati has not been playing good. I don't think their defense has enough firepower to stop Tom Brady and that offense over there in New England. Brady and Gronkowski historically have good games against Cincinnati. Brady's averages about 20.5 points over 5 games that he's played against Cincinnati. Gronk averages about 11 points in the 2 games that he's played against Cincinnati. I'm staying away from anyone on the Cincinnati offense. Like I said, New England's defense is pretty good, and Andy Dalton has been struggling pretty bad. In season long, I wouldn't look to start anyone. Sorry. I would look to start someone over Hill and Bernard. I think they're going to both struggle this week. AJ Green should be okay in season-long formats. He's going to get his targets. He may even get a touchdown. But that's going to be a tough game for Cincinnati.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you might like New England in that week then.
Yeah, I'm all over New England.
Yeah, I like New England as well this week. Cincinnati didn't look great against Dallas last week. They've historically over the past few years they've done very well in the regular season and then struggled a bit in the obviously struggled a lot in the postseason. But they have made the playoffs each of the past few years with Dalton. But starting out 2-3 this year, now they've got New England. They're off to a rough start. I like New England this week. I don't. If you have AJ Green, I'm playing him in season-long leagues. I'm probably not playing him in any daily fantasy. Same thing that we said last week. New England really tries to take away what you do well. They shut down the Cleveland rushing attack last week. I think they're going to shut down the Cincinnati rushing attack. I think they're going to double or throw shade over Green for most of the game. So, I think he'll get his targets. I don't think he'll put up monster numbers, though. But I definitely like New England. Like I said, James White is definitely somebody to keep an eye on in PPR leagues. I think his value is going to start to go up.
Yeah, I definitely like him. I'm also pretty high on Gronkowski this week. Ryan mentioned earlier, he had a really good week. I think it's going to shift. Martellus Bennett's going to kind of, take a back seat and get back to blocking and playing hard, getting his fingers in the dirt, which nothing wrong with that. And I think I definitely think Gronkowski is going to get back on the score sheet this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like Bennett is going to remain a part of the offense there. Like you said, they're both great. Gronk and Bennett are both great blocking tight ends, and Gronk's obviously great in the passing game, and Bennett's a very serviceable passing game tight end as well. So I think they'll definitely keep him a part of that offense. Similar to when Aaron Hernandez was there. Belichick likes his two tight end formats. So I don't think Martellus Bennett, if you have him as a tight end in any of your season-long leagues, I don't think you just drop him now that Gronk's back.
No, he's going to get his points. He's going to get his targets. I definitely like him in the red zone. They're going to line up with both tight ends in the red zone. And I kind of like Bennett to be the guy that they're going to go to.
Yeah, I think Gronk's going to draw a lot of coverage, and Bennett's going to, Bennett's going to see some open field there a lot of weeks. And that receiving core, you got Edelman, Amendola, Chris Hogan had a great week last week. So, that offense is really rounded back into form. I think they're going to have to establish some type of running game with Tom back, though. They couldn't do it in Cleveland. I think, they can't just completely rely on the short passing game that Brady's so good at. They have to develop some kind of rushing game to wind the clock down in the third, fourth quarter, try to protect a lead. So I think, over the upcoming weeks, I think it's going to be a struggle for them to try to develop and establish that running game, especially here in Cincinnati, especially if Blunt a little banged up. But I see down the rest of the regular season, I think they're going to really make that a high priority here. Carolina at New Orleans. I got Carolina in this game. I'm assuming Cam's going to be back. I like pretty much everybody on Carolina's offense. Newton, if he's back, Benjamin, Olsen. New Orleans defense is just, they're a sieve basically. But New Orleans is a team that, going up against any team in the league, I could see them winning or I can see them losing. Because they can just put up so many points, but they're also going to give up so many points that they really can win or lose any week.
So my analysis this week on this game is going to come with the disclaimer. I know last week I said I don't like taking anybody coming off of injuries or bye weeks. I'm changing my mind. I can do that because it's my podcast. I like John Stewart this week. I definitely think he's going to be a high-end running back number 2. New Orleans is giving up the most points to running backs. And they even had off last week, and they're still giving up a ton of points to running backs. He's averaging about 10 points per game in the past 10 games against New Orleans. So definitely feel free to plug him into daily fantasy formats. Again, Vegas is projecting New Orleans to be in another shootout, just like the last time these two teams played. The score got up to 41-38. The last game Cam played against New Orleans, he scored 40 points, so he might be one to take a look at in daily fantasy. I don't know if he's going to get that high again, but I definitely like him this week.
Yeah.
Both defenses have been struggling, so there's like I said, there's not going to be a shortage of scoring. Load up on any Saints, but you may want to pay attention to Colby Fleener, sixth most points to tight ends.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that Fleener, his first few games, he didn't put up great numbers, but he started to come on in the subsequent weeks there. So I do like Fleener. Like you said, Carolina's they haven't been the defense they've been in the past few years. They have been getting shredded a bit. This one is in New Orleans, and Brees can definitely put up some points in that stadium there. So I'm not just abandoning any of those New Orleans offensive players, but like I said, I like Carolina. Yeah, you like Carolina this week?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a close game, but I like Carolina this week.
Nice. Kansas City at Oakland.
Ooh, another game that I really, really like. I think this one's gonna be a little bit lower scoring than what Vegas is predicting. But it's good old Alex Smith. He's gonna be consistent like he's always is. He's gonna dink and dunk all over. Oakland's giving up the 8th most points to running backs. So Jamal Charles could see a good week, on a good comeback week.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you're looking for a spot start for a quarterback, this week, let's say you got Rivers and you don't love him playing on Thursday against Denver. Alex Smith is somebody to think about. Oakland, quarterbacks have been putting up good numbers against Oakland these past few weeks. I don't think he's going to have an out-of-this-world game, but I think he'll be a serviceable guy for you this week. I think he'll do better than Rivers. But overall, I do like KC. Coming off the bye, they got shredded by Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago. So I think that defense is really going to look to themselves early. Like you said, I think it's going to be a bit more low scoring than projected. I think it's overall going to be kind of a mid-scoring game. But I like KC in a little bit of an upset here this week with Oakland at home. What are you thinking?
Agreed. I like KC this week. So I just want to hit you guys with some other stats. Oakland, they're like we like Oakland. They're an exciting team. They're always in exciting games, but their stats against skill positions for fantasy are pretty high. They're giving the 5th most points to wide receivers. They're giving up a ton of points to tight ends. I think, they're giving up like the 4th or 5th most points to tight ends. And I definitely think Amari Cooper is going to get matched up with Marcus Peters, and that leaves Crabtree wide open again. So I also like him to have a really, really good game. Just to throw this one in there, Kansas City is giving up the 7th most points to wide receivers. Yeah. So this is definitely a game to target in your daily fantasy formats. Alex Smith is super, super cheap on all daily fantasy sites. I think he's like 6,800 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like I said, I like Alex Smith, especially in daily fantasy. I think those Kansas City numbers, at least points to wide receivers, are a bit high. Just because I think that Pittsburgh game's inflating it some, given they've already had their bye, so that Pittsburgh game is a quarter of their season so far. But I do think Kansas City is, is a little bit weaker than they have been on defense in some of the subsequent years. But I like them to get the job done against Oakland here. I think, Oakland has been playing all close games here. All their games are exciting to watch. They've been coming back in the fourth quarter. They've been aggressive, very, very aggressive in the fourth quarter, from play calling to the actual plays Carr's making, some of the receivers are making. But I don't think you can win every close game. So I think Kansas City's got this one. I like Smith. And I like the Ware-Charles kind of combo there. What about probably the game I'm looking forward to watching the most, at least, is Dallas at Green Bay.
Yeah, that's going to be another good one. I'm saying, for fantasy purposes, I'm saying fire Aaron Rodgers again. He looks like he got his confidence back, and he's starting to get hot, and he should have a good game against Dallas. I like Dak Prescott a lot also. I can see him throwing for a touchdown and running for a touchdown. The Cowboys are giving up the 6th most points to wide receivers, so Jordy Nelson is in a good spot to produce. Both teams have good defenses, so run defenses. So I'm gonna stay away from running backs. I know Ezekiel Elliott's been pretty hot. I think Green Bay can shut him down, plugging up the middle and putting those linebackers on him. The Cowboys are giving up the 4th most points to tight ends, so I think Richard Rodgers might be a nice little sneaky play this week.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. I don't love Dak in really any fantasy standpoint, daily fantasy or season-long fantasy. He doesn't put up great numbers, and Green Bay's pass defense has definitely looked a lot better this week or last week against the Giants. So I'm staying away from Dak. But from an overall just non-fantasy standpoint, Dak is, he's looking very strong. I really touched on it when we were reviewing week 5, but I just really like Dallas's play call in here the past few games. They're not asking Dak to throw it 40 times a game. He's only throwing it, 20 to 28 times a game there. Ezekiel Elliott's running 15 to 18 times a game. Morris is getting his touches. Dunbar's getting a few catches out of the backfield here. So I do like what Dallas is bringing to the table. They do have a suspect pass rush in Dallas. So I'd like to see that get going a little bit more. Obviously, you want to see Dez come back healthy. But in Green Bay, I do like Green Bay this week. I'm still staying away from Cobb, but I like Jordy Nelson, and I like Aaron Rodgers there.
Yeah, I think if the Cowboys have Dez, this game might be a different story. Yeah. Like you, I like Green Bay, but if Dez plays, I may have to call you up on Sunday and change my pick.
Switch it up. Yeah, we both went against Green Bay last week, and did not get the results we were looking for. So I think we're back on the Green Bay bandwagon here. Indianapolis at Houston. This is your Sunday night game. Indianapolis last week kind of fought back to 3-2 or 2-3. Got a big win over the Chicago Bears. Not a great win, not an outstanding win, but it was a win. Going into Houston, who just got trounced last week by Minnesota. I like Houston in this game. Indy just hasn't looked great all year. They have struggled. Luck isn't putting up great fantasy numbers. I don't like him to this week. Houston has been keeping a lot of these games low scoring here. So I'm not, Hopkins really hasn't looked great this season. He had a serviceable week last week. He had about 18 fantasy points. But that was because of a kind of a garbage time touchdown there at the end. So, I'm staying away from most of my fantasy players in this game.
Yeah, Vegas has this game at an over-under of 48.5. If you're feeling spontaneous, I like Brock Osweiler. Feel free to plug him in. I don't think he's going to have a great game. I don't think he's going to have a bad game. He's going to be somewhere right in the middle. I like Lamar Miller. He's a name that I've been looking at. like you said, these games with Houston have been real low scoring. He does get his touches, but something seems a little off
Yeah.
with him. Indianapolis does give up the fourth most points to running backs, and they got shredded by Amir Abdullah a few weeks ago.
Yeah, Jay Howard last week put it on him
Jay
too.
Howard touched him up pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about Lamar Miller. When I was setting my lineup, I put him in, I put him out, I put him in, I put him out. I think I'm going to leave him out. I opted um, for Jonathan Stewart. He seems like a safer play to me. I can't predict what this Houston offense is going to do. From Indy side, continue to ride T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck. I expect Houston to get out to a lead, so Andrew Luck's just going to throw the ball a million times like he normally does.
Yeah, I can see that. I like T.Y. Hilton. I think T.Y. Hilton's been putting up some great numbers. I don't love Luck in this week. I don't think Houston's going to jump on him too much where they're just going to have to abandon the run. And it takes a lot for Indy to abandon the run, even without a good run or a good run offense. Luck's been putting up a lot of fourth quarter numbers here from a fantasy standpoint because they're always, 7 to 10 points behind, and he's throwing them back into the game or trying to. But this is a game Indy really needs here. They're 2-3. Houston's a game ahead of them. They want to contend for this game. So Indy doesn't want to fall 2 games back with a loss to Houston this early. But like I said, I think Houston's got more firepower around their quarterbacks. I think Houston's got a much better defense. So I'm going Houston this week. What about yourself?
Yeah, I like Houston. I just don't have much faith in Indianapolis this season. Their offense looks okay. Their defense is still banged up, and they haven't looked that great these past couple of weeks. So yeah, I have to go with Houston. Houston's defense is too good to get beat by 2 guys.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's before we do some rapid fire, let's jump into some higher lower here. Couple game, like you said, you're a couple games behind. But we'll see if we can come back. We got a QB-centric higher or lower for you this week. Why don't you give me your first one?
Yeah, so Alex Smith, higher or lower than 20 fantasy points?
Points. And they're going up against we just
Oakland.
talked about it. They're going up against Oakland. I like higher for Alex Smith this week. I don't think it's going to be much higher, but I think it is going to be a bit higher.
Yeah, I think it's going to be higher. I think he's going to throw for 1-2 touchdowns, and he's going to have a few rushing yards.
Okay, so let's jump into this next one here. Same exact stat that you just gave, just a different quarterback. Same one we went with last week too. Matt Ryan against the Broncos last week. We went 20 fantasy points. He went lower. He only had 17. So this week, Matt Ryan, 20 fantasy points going up against Seattle's defense.
I'm going to say lower.
Say lower?
I'm going to ride out my lower with Matt Ryan.
I'm actually going to go higher here for Matt Ryan. I don't think he goes way over, but I do think he goes a bit over this week. I'd put him, maybe right around 24, 25 fantasy points against Seattle. But I don't think he's going to be an all-star this week by any means.
Yeah, that's why I'm sticking with lower. That Seattle defense is still pretty good.
It is. What's your next one for me here? Who's your next quarterback?
So I have Brian Hoyer.
Okay.
The comeback kid. He's going up against the Jaguars. Brian Hoyer, higher or lower than 25 fantasy points? He's been lighting it up recently, and Jacksonville is not that good.
25. I'm going to go lower. Jacksonville isn't good, but they're coming off a bye here, so I think that they, they'll be prepared for Hoyer. I think they're going to make some tweaks to that defense. But Hoyer has been putting up some very strong fantasy numbers over the past few weeks. And, with them playing and looking a bit better than they did early, I know we had this debate last week. I'm starting to think that they should leave Hoyer in when even when Cutler gets healthy again.
Yeah, that's what the word on the street is. I heard somebody say that Cutler lost the locker room.
Yeah, I mean that team, that offense just looks way more dynamic with Hoyer in there. I never thought I'd say that, but it just looked way more dynamic with Hoyer in there. Now it could be that Jay Howard came in and started getting the starting job right around the same time as Hoyer, and Howard's looked a lot better than Langford did. They have been beat up a bit with Hoyer at the wide receiver position too, so I gotta ride it out a little bit longer with Hoyer. Higher or lower? 25 for Hoyer.
I'm gonna say lower.
Lower.
Lower, and I like Jacksonville to win this game actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Dak Prescott in Green Bay. We know that Green Bay defense is at least it played better last week. So Dak Prescott, higher or lower? 0.5 interceptions. So is he going to, he's close to Brady's record of most attempts without an interception to start your career here. So you think he throws one this week, or do you think most likely he sets the record if he doesn't?
I think he is going to throw an interception. That Green Bay defense is good. They're going to bring pressure on him.
Yeah. So you're going higher?
Yeah, I think that's going to scare him.
So you're going higher here?
Yeah, yep, higher. He's going to throw a good one.
Yeah, I got to go lower. He hasn't done it yet, and he has gone up against some okay defenses. Cincinnati's okay from a secondary standpoint. They've looked a bit worse this year, but I think same things they've been doing. They've been putting him in positions to succeed. What's your last QB-centric one here?
So I went with kind of an easy one. The Pittsburgh's going to Miami. Big Ben, higher or lower than 25 fantasy points?
I'm going to go higher.
Higher?
Higher than 25.
I'm gonna go lower. I like Big Ben this week, but I think they're gonna turn the juice loose this week. I like Le'Veon Bell a lot.
Yeah, I like Bell a lot this week too, but I think they're gonna put up some points. We can talk a bit more when we go through the rapid fire here, but I'm not as comfortable with Pittsburgh as I should be this week. All right, last one. Marcus Mariota, 2.5 touchdowns. Mariota had a great week last week. He's at home this week against Cleveland. 2.5, let me press this, 2.5 passing touchdowns. So not counting anything he rushes in.
I'm going to go with lower. I like him to score right at 2 touchdowns. I think DeMarco Murray is going to be the one to look at this week. I think he's going to have the most points off of this Titans roster. Yeah,
I can see that. I'm actually going to go higher this week. Had 3 he had 3 receiving passing touchdowns last week. And Cleveland struggles from the secondary standpoint, so I'm going to go higher this week. So we got our higher lower there. Let's go through some rapid fire picks. Thursday night game, Denver at San Diego. The word is that Simeon may be back for the game. Gary Kubiak's going to be missing the game because of migraine and health issues for Denver. Who you picking?
I'm going with Denver. I could go out there and coach Denver this week, and they'll be able to beat San Diego.
Yeah, I do like Denver as well. But, if you're in a survivor pool, I'm probably not picking Denver this week. I'm staying away from – it hits the 3 things that I try to stay away from. It's an away game, it's a Thursday night game, and it's a division game.
Yeah.
Try to stay away from those. But I do like Denver overall. But I can see San Diego has been good, so I could see them giving them a run for their money here. San Fran at Buffalo.
San Fran. I'm taking Buffalo. I like Buffalo a lot this week. I think LaShawn McCoy is going to have a pretty decent game. and San Fran's just not good. They're not that good. They're
No, they're not.
struggling.
I mean, San Fran, 1-4. They have had a chance in a few of these games to be 2-3, 3-2. But their rush defense is just god awful. Every week, it doesn't matter the running back. They just light him up from a fantasy perspective. So I'm going Buffalo as well. Really love McCoy this week. Buffalo has really rebounded after starting 0-2. So they win a few more games and they can put some pressure on from a wild card standpoint.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they look good, but they're competitive.
Yeah, they're competitive. Jacksonville at Chicago.
I'm taking Jacksonville. I like Jacksonville this week. I think they're going to surprise some people.
Yeah, I like Jacksonville as well, coming off the bye. Got their first win right before the bye. I think Bortles is going to have a good game here. But I do think Jay Howard is going to continue to put up really strong fantasy numbers. Since he got the starting job, he's rushed for over 100 yards both games, had some catches out of the backfield, gotten into the end zone both games. So I really like Howard to continue that against Jacksonville. LA at Detroit. I'm actually going Detroit here.
I'm going to go with LA. I think LA's defense is pretty good.
Yeah, LA's defense is strong, but in Detroit, I think Detroit's going to put up enough numbers to outscore LA. LA's offense they've started to look suspect again, even last week. They're getting Gurley a bit more involved into the passing game, which I really like. And, if you're a fantasy owner of Gurley, you definitely like. But I'm just not bought in on Los Angeles yet. Cleveland at Tennessee.
I'm going to go Tennessee. I kind of have to.
Yeah.
I feel bad for beat up on Cleveland all these weeks, but that one's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. If McCown was in there over Kessler, might
be a different game.
Yeah, it might be a different game. But Tennessee, even in the games they've lost this year, they've kept it close in a lot of those games. Mariota's playing better. He's not outstanding, but he's definitely playing better. So I do like Tennessee here. Pittsburgh at Miami.
I'm going to take Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm going to take Pittsburgh as well. But, you look back over the past few years, Pittsburgh always blows a terrible game every year against one of the worst teams in the league. And it's consistent. You look back every year over the past 5 to 6 years, they've lost a game against a team that ended with 4-12 or worse. And Miami, they look like they could be one of those teams that ends 4-12 or worse. So this could be Pittsburgh's week to lose one. But I do like Pittsburgh. I can't go against them now. I like a lot of those offensive players from a fantasy standpoint. From a Miami standpoint, I'm keeping an eye on Jarvis Landry. Same thing I said last week about Brandon Marshall. Pittsburgh gives up a lot of underneath throws that kind of just lets them pile up the yardage. Marshall had about 8 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown last week. So I like Jarvis Landry. And if Arian Foster's back for this game, he's questionable. But if he is back, I like Arian Foster this week if he's healthy. Pittsburgh, they're not going to give up a lot of yards running the ball, but they give up a lot of dump downs to fantasy running backs here. A lot of check downs, a lot of, catches just and yards piling up in the passing game. Baltimore at New York. This is a game where you had, two teams start out really strong, and they're two teams on losing streaks here. Who you got?
I'm going to take New York. I'm going to keep riding them. Baltimore did not look good last week, and I think New York is just a little bit better than they are.
Yeah, I agree.
Hold on. Is the running back for New York coming back? Is Breen back or Rashad Jennings back?
I'm not sure. Either way, I like New York in that game.
All right.
But Baltimore did fire their offensive coordinator this week. And last time they did that, they went on to win the Super Bowl that year. So good omens in Baltimore. I think if I'm a Terrence West fantasy owner, or if you see him on the waiver wire and you need help at running back, I'm keeping an eye on him. 2 weeks ago they cut Forsett, gave him the starting job, rushed for over 100 yards and had a touchdown. Last week, still rushed for only about 90-some yards with only on 11 carries. So I think that they're going to really start to pound him the ball a little bit more. But I do like New York overall. I don't think Baltimore's offense is going to be able to keep up with them. Philly at Washington.
I got to take Philly.
Got to. I'm taking Philly as well. I don't know if Jordan Reed will be able to play this week. He's in the concussion protocol. I don't think he'll be able to play. And Reed is such a big part of that Washington offense. Wentz finally threw his first touch or threw his first interception last week. Really kind of a desperation heave there at the end of the game. Atlanta at Seattle. This is probably the most exciting game this week here.
Atlanta, Seattle. This one I've been tossing back and forth. Russell Wilson's still a little banged up. Atlanta's been playing awesome. I got to go with Seattle.
Yeah.
I think the Atlanta defense is still a little bit too leaky.
Yeah, I got Seattle as well. Seattle's at home. They're coming off a bye. Atlanta's coming off a tough game against Denver. I could see Seattle jumping on them early here. Jimmy Graham, past two games, has had over 100 yards receiving. So I like Jimmy Graham in this game. I like Doug Baldwin in this game. Any game I like those Atlanta running backs. But I'm keeping a close eye on them this week because I'm not sure who's going to get the touches. But I like Seattle here. But I can go back and forth on that one. Jets at Cardinals Monday night.
Cardinals.
Yeah, gotta go Cardinals. If Palmer's not back and healthy, then I might be able to talk myself into New York. But New York has just started off this season very poor. Person I really like in this game is John Brown. The Jets have just been getting beat deep every game this year. They've given up a 50-yard touchdown pass. So I like really John Brown as Arizona's deep threat, especially if Palmer's back. So we'll see how that goes. Anything else you got for week 6 or week 5?
Now, which game did we differ on week 6? I was trying to think. I couldn't remember.
The ones that we just picked here?
Yeah, I know there was 1 or 2 games where we differed.
Yeah, you took Los Angeles. I took Detroit.
Okay.
Here. I believe that's actually the only game we differed on.
Yeah, I like it.
We're gonna ride or die together here this week.
Just
up in the air though.
Yeah, it definitely is up in the air. I got a few players to mention that I forgot to mention these guys as I was going through. I like Russell Wilson a lot this week. Atlanta's given up the second most points to quarterbacks. I know he's a little banged up, but I could see him throwing for quite a bit of yards. I'm also like Doug Baldwin a lot. I think Atlanta is 11th versus wide receivers in fantasy. I like as we mentioned the entire podcast, Le'Veon Bell is a must start down there in Miami. Jason Witten, I like him a lot. He's another one who might be a sneaky little play. Green Bay is getting up the 7th most points to tight ends. Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, and John Brown. I like them a lot. The Jets are giving up the 4th most points to quarterbacks and the 2nd most points to wide receivers. So if you have any Cardinals on your fantasy team, they're all must starts. And as we mentioned, LaShawn McCoy, play him in daily fantasy formats, play him in season-long formats. San Francisco, like we said, isn't good. They have some injuries at the linebacker position and along that defensive line, and they're giving up the 5th most points to running backs.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Michael shredded San Francisco's defense, so LaShawn McCoy better be able to. I think there's a few teams that are, really, like I said, really close to hitting that panic button or have already pressed it. San Diego's already hit it. The Jets have already hit it. I think Arizona kind of maybe staved it off for a few weeks. Carolina's right there. And I don't, I like Carolina this week, but I don't think I don't think they're going to roll over New Orleans by any means. It's a division game on the road. Newton missed last week. Cincinnati is getting close at 2-3 against New England this week. So there are a few teams that are kind of hovering on falling out of the playoff picture here early. So
I think
keep an eye on.
I think Cincinnati's already hitting that panic button. I think Carolina, if they lose this week, they're definitely going to be hitting the panic button.
Yeah, and if Philadelphia loses 2 games in a row, their fans are just going to call for a Wentz trade. So
they're going to be calling for a trade. They're going to want Nick Foles back.
Yeah,
it's going to be bad.
Bring back Matt Barkley. Yeah. All right. So that's all I got for this week. Thanks for listening, guys. Again, you can check us out, www.wildlingsports.com, wildlingsports@gmail.com. You can shoot us a note, Stitcher, SoundCloud, hit us up.
Twitter, you can yell at me on Twitter. Tell me how much I suck at making predictions on Twitter.
Yeah, you're jinxing them. Just go against whatever Jordan's saying this week. Thanks, guys.
Yep, see ya.